Hey there, Wargamers, Just Aaron Paint here, and today, boom, I want to talk about some mechs. I'd like to welcome you guys back to the channel. Thank you for tuning in today. If you are new here, please alpha strike that like and subscribe button. Smash it like you mean it. Let's take our energy and focus into the enemy mech's face, but help it, or turn it into helping the channel grow. So if you are a returning viewer, thank you so much for having my six. Thanks for being an awesome lance mate or star mate, whatever the case may be for you. Thank you for being here and supporting what I do. Now that said, let's get into what I want to talk about today, and that is I want to show you some mechs. Now, me throwing down the little preview of some green and red mechs there was a bit of a red herring. It was a misleading drop in because I have some mechs I want to show you for the NOVA 2023 Grinder box that are not in a box for me to unbox. They are mechs that Adam from Deathware Designs, one of my co-workers, happened to paint up for me. Now I can't give him story credit because he can just get whatever he wants from DRD, but one of the things I've been doing for those who have helped with my grinder box is giving them store credit so I can pick up some DRD materials, especially for those who have donated the minis and painted them for me. In this case, can't really do that for Adam, but I did buy the minis for him to paint for me. So yeah, I got something out of it, but he didn't have to like buy the minis. So that said, I want to show you what he has done for me. I do want to preface this, not to spread too much of his business, but I do want to mention this because I think it is rad. I just used the term rad. That just happened. I think it's rad that Adam works for a company that does stuff for wargaming, paints a piss load of minis, way more minis than I ever will. That's what he does, and he plays a whole bunch of games. He's painting all the time. And he has, I think it's red-green color blind or color issues, and he still manages to put stuff out and works through it. I don't think it's actually technically a super big detriment for him. I know that he recognizes it, but I've always found it fascinating that he manages to paint what he paints, and I think that is super cool. And he struggles at work sometimes with yellows and greens being close to each other because they look similar. And then he painted some yellow models for me, and I missed an opportunity to troll him. I know him, and he trolls me all the time. And I almost want to, or if I thought about it, I would be like, hey, it's a really good shade of green, just to mess with him. I didn't think about it at the time. But I do think it's cool that he sees things in the world differently than we do, and he still paints stuff and does it so well. Hopefully that comes across proper. That's the intent. I'm not trying to slink shade or anything. I don't think it came across that way. But I think it's really cool that someone is overcoming something and doing something cool. So that said, let's jump into the mechs he painted for me. And first up, we have got the Fire Moth. So I picked up a clan box for him. I wanted to be a little cheeky, and I didn't tell him that everyone for the NOVA 2023 Grinder was only asked to paint 4 minis, so I got him to paint 5. Shh, don't tell him. So he wasn't aware, or at least I don't think he was aware, that everyone painted a light, medium, heavy, and assault for me, or in general. I feel like I may have mentioned it, and he forgot, and then I let him kind of give me some ideas about things he might want to paint, and then I just bought him a box and let him go. But yeah, he went with this cool yellow scheme, and he tried some new stuff, which I think is really, really neat. He was trying out some new oil washes from AK Interactive. He was using some contrast paints, and he was using this as basically a practice because he wants to find a process for doing yellow that he likes. So he used these minis for me as a test bed, and he wanted to try and use some water effects to do some kind of mud. I do know at work he said he wasn't as happy with the basing. I guess it didn't give quite the effect he wanted, but honestly, I think it's cool. It's close enough to what he was after, and he tried something. He tried something new, and you know, this is a good place as any to test stuff on a project that he's not as invested in. He's not a big Battletech fan. And from what I gather with Battletech, the things he's most interested in is not the mechs, it's the tanks. So I don't think he cared too much for these. He just painted them because it was going to help me out. But this is his least favorite. He did not like this one as much, and I have to agree, the Fire Moth is one of my least favorite clan mechs too. It's just kind of goofy. As we're looking at these today, I do want to pose a question to you guys in the community. What faction or clan could these be? Or are they going to have to be mercs? He painted how he wanted to paint them, and I told him it's artist choice. There's no requirement. You do what you want to do. And he went with yellow and some off yellow or beige here. So I'd be curious if there is a clan that this would accurately depict, so I could call it. Excuse me, weird hiccup. So I could call it that. He also used, I think it was Talisar Blue. Yep, got it right here for the cockpits, and it worked out really, really nicely. That said, I think we're going to switch over to another mech here. I wanted to talk about something else, but you can see it better on the other mech bros. We're going to switch over to the Cougar, which he didn't mind too much. Wasn't one of his favorites, but not his least favorite. It was just, it's kind of there. Again, same kind of deal going on. Got our yellows, got our Talisar blue, which kind of looks like a teal because I'm assuming it went over the yellow. Got our off yellow here, which I think looks great. And these look dirty and grungy, which I think is what that oil wash he was using was meant to do. And it's turned out pretty nice. I also really like this coloration on this metallic. I'm not sure if the metallic went down and then the oil wash over it. It's not overly shiny, but you can still see a little bit of a metal kind of flake to it. I'm assuming that's, because it was matted down probably. But yeah, it's still got it, and it looks like an old kind of antique-y metal, which pairs really well with the yellow. So that said, while he may not have been a huge fan of the Cougar, I think the Cougar's cool. I like the shape. I like the cockpit being kind of like a fuselage from an aircraft. It looks neat to me, and I don't mind the Cougar at all. I think it's pretty cool. Next up, he didn't mind this one. He said this one for him, he felt like, and again, he doesn't know really anything about Battletech, so he's just looking at him. I think he said this reminded him as maybe something that looks like it could have existed in Star Wars. He's a big Star Wars Legion fan, so that does not surprise me. And this one, maybe it's the way it was posed in the box. It almost looks like it's like got flamethrowers and he's about to mow down infantry, right? Because he's literally aiming kind of down in front of him. I don't know if Adam reposed it or if it just came out of the box kind of hunched over, because sometimes they do that. But I'm also a fan of the Uller. I think it's got an interesting profile. It's a goofy looking mech, and I don't know. I like it. I think it's cool. Yeah. And I always feel weird when I'm doing these unboxings of the mechs for the Nova grinder box, because especially if they're all the same, because then I feel like I'm being redundant or I'm not putting enough effort into it, and I'm trying. But they all have the same elements, so I kind of say the same things over and over. So I start talking about like the mech choice, the mech design, and I'm like, oh, you know what? Here's the thing. Sorry, I'm sitting here rambling as I do. He was not as happy with some of the water effects on here, but I didn't notice this on these. This almost looks like the foot here almost looks like it's buried in the ground here. So that actually helps sell the illusion of the mud pretty well. I'm not sure if that was intentional. I know he said that the texture paste was still really soft, I think, when he was doing some of the water effects. So that probably helped aid in the mixing a little bit of the realistic water with the paste, and it makes it look like, especially right here, because it comes up over the foot, so it really helps it look like he's stepping in mud. So honestly, like, perhaps the Fire Moth didn't do it as well. Maybe that was the first one tested on, which wouldn't shock me since this was his least favorite. Probably tested on it first. And you can see that the application of the water effects was much less intense here. He went a little bit more reserved and then got that kind of mix with the foot, which I think worked out good. And then over here, it almost looks like it's like in muck, like it's making noise as he's stepping in and out of this mud or the swampy area. Same thing here. We got a little bit of the mix here coming up over the foot, so it helps sell the effect that this is very kind of muddy and wet. Yeah, so I think that Cougar and the Uller got that mud effect a lot better than the Fire Moth. Not that there's anything wrong with the Fire Moth, but I bet that was the first one he tested it on, and then these two probably came sometime after. I can't really tell you the order. But yeah, next up, second to last here, we've got a Nova Cat, which I absolutely love. I just think it's an interesting mech design. It's kind of, I guess they're all kind of bipedal, most of the mechs I have anyway. But it's kind of humanoid in nature. You got the two legs, the two arms kind of thing, whereas like this one does have the legs, but it's different, like they're cocked back like some kind of weird bird. I wish I had a whole like backlog of stuff to cut in here, because I would totally get an Always Sunny reference there. If you get that, we can be friends. But I like a little bit of asymmetry with the 2 cannon, the 3 cannon, and the thing that I absolutely love about this, and this is going to date me a little bit, there was a mech called, I think it was 9 Ball. He was white, yellow, and I think maybe a little splash of black. I can't remember exactly. And it was a Merc mech from MechWarrior Dark Age, and it was a Nova Cat. It's probably similar in size to this, and it had similar colors, a bit more white, I think, on it. And I had it. I collected Mercs then. I collected a bunch of stuff, but like Mercs, Republic of the Sphere, specifically mostly Knights, but I collected a bunch of Republic, and then Draconis Combine, or Dragon's Fury, those are my three. And then, of course, you fast forward to actual, like, Battletech and Alpha Strike, and now I'm a Clan Wolf and Wolf's Dragoons. Back then, I didn't know anything about the lore, or at least not enough. I mean, I knew enough to like the mercs, right? And I knew enough about the Republic of the Sphere that I liked him enough that I went out of my way to try and get Dice Puck for him, because it was one of my main factions, right? But I fast forward to now, and I've grown to love the Wolf's Dragoons particularly. It's my prime main, and then the Beta Galaxy is very close to being a tie. But yeah, so that's one of the reasons why this has a place in my heart. And for Adam, I think he said this was number 2 for his favorites. He really liked this one, and I can't fault him. It looks really, really cool. The paint scheme worked out really nice, and I'm digging it. I think it's going to look really stellar on the table, and I'll be very curious to know if you guys have, if there's a clan out there with these colors that would make sense for these guys to be, or are they just going to be old merc boys? And last but not least, from this clan box, we have got the Masakari. And this is the one that Adam liked as his favorite, and this is the one he said he would be piloting if he was piloting one. And I was like, yeah, you can't go wrong with a Masakari. And of them, I think this one's got the best canopy. It also had the largest surface area, so the Talisar Blue contrast paint got a lot of work done. He looks like he's been mucking around in some mud, stomping and stepping, and he's got some splash up here, which I think is cool. And I'm really glad that Adam was practicing and playing around with this and not afraid. And I think there's something about working on a mini that there's no expectations. It could be good, it could be bad, however you want to view it. But knowing that the other person doesn't care and it's got a purpose, and then he just gets to let loose and try stuff, right? And I feel like he might have been a little worried about it, and I'm just like, no, dude, do whatever you want, like, have a good time. And then we actually got something that looks pretty cool, and he tried out some new stuff, and I think that is pretty awesome. So yeah, this one also lets you see the barrels pretty nicely, which I like that patina, that color. Looks really, really cool. It almost makes it look like these guys have been in this swampy environment for a very long time. The mechs are beat up, they're grungy, they're dirty, and I like it, and I think they're going to look really cool. I also find it amusing that he gravitated towards the Masakari. I doubt it was simply because it was the biggest guy in the box. Legitimately, it's a cool looking mech. And then, like he said, he's like, if I wasn't this one, I would be this one. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, honestly, that's the two coolest looking mechs in the bunch here, arguably. I think the cases could be made for the Cougar and the Uller a little bit. Who cares about the Fire Moth? No one cares. I'm just kidding. People who like the Fire Moth do, and people who don't are right. Go ahead and type in the comments if that makes you rage a little bit. I just gotta give you a little bit of banter. But that said, these are the mechs that Adam painted up for me, and I am super excited about adding these to the Nova Grinder box. And I'm really curious about trying to find some really trolly pilot special abilities for the Masakari to represent him as the pilot, because he's known as like kind of king troll at work, and I'll have to come up with something that makes him perform in an interesting way on the tabletop for the grinder. That said, folks, thank you for hanging out with me today. Hope these look cool. If you know of a clan or maybe a merc group that would rep these colors, let me know. Sound off in the comments below. For anyone who's watching this and doesn't know what's going on, the community's been painting minis for me for the NOVA2023 Grinder, and the minis that have gone into that box will be used for will be transitioned over to a demo box afterwards that I'll use for running games, doing other grinder events, doing NOVA 2024 hopefully, and maybe some stuff at Adepticon, things like that. So these minis that the community's done have helped me get my grinder box together, and now demo box when it's done for Nova, and now I'm going to try and use that to help grow the Battletech community by doing stuff with them for players and to get new players into it. So by helping me, you have in turn also helped grow the community, and I think that is super cool. So that said, as usual, I have found something to continue to ramble about. It is what I do. But now I'm going to try and shut up and sign off. It's time to get off today, folks. So thank you so much for hanging out with me. If you've been getting some hobby progress in, as always, make sure you share with us. I'd like to see what you're working on. But as always, keep painting your models, keep rolling your dice, and I will catch you guys next time. If you guys are still sitting here watching this, let's take a moment to put a pop-up here to showcase those wonderful Patreon supporters here. We'll let that scroll here, and thank you so much for supporting what I do. That's super awesome. I really do appreciate that.